Welcome back. It's time this week to talk about Macionis Chapter 16, Technology and the Environment. Let's start off with the question, what is ecology? Ecology, quite simply, is the study of human beings within their natural environment. Mostly, we humans, at least in Western societies, have viewed ourselves as separate from the environment, the master and manager of the environment, if you will. But ecology is a whole circle of life thing. Or you can also think of it like a spider web. Humans are just one of millions, even billions of strands in the spider web. We affect all the other strands that touch us, and we are affected by them. When we study the environment in sociology and its social problems, it's most helpful to take on an ecological perspective. You don't have to. Some believe that environmental problems can be solved by maintaining that we are masters of the environment and thus simply need to find new ways to control it. And in some situations, that may be our only alternative. But when we look for sustainable solutions to environmental problems, as Macionis discusses in this chapter, then it's helpful to think of humanity as one part of a larger ecological whole. What is the human impact on the environment? This is a difficult question to answer because there are many perspectives, and those perspectives have changed over the course of history. For example, during the Industrial Revolution, coal and wood were the fuels of choice, mostly because we really hadn't figured out anything else. In the 1800s, we began systematically stripping away at mountains to get to the coal and cutting down forests to get wood. There was little thought to replanting or to the air pollution being caused by burning these fuels. Nowadays, we have lots of other alternatives for getting the energy we need, and each has a cost to its environment, though some have less of a cost than others. Current, Currently, nuclear fission power plants produce toxic waste. Oil and natural gas require wells, which can have a greater or lesser impact depending on where they're built. I expect that the great oil spill of 2010 in the Gulf of Mexico will be a lasting reminder of the difficulties and risks of extracting oil from under the sea at such depths. And the burning of just about any kind of fuel produces carbon dioxide, CO2, and there has always been some amount of CO2 in our atmosphere. The air we breathe has been made up of about 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 1% argon, 0.05% carbon dioxide, and the rest just small amounts of other gases. Now, that may seem like a small proportion of CO2, but that's not the point. If we throw off that balance, then our atmosphere is unable to maintain its protective barrier against ultraviolet rays from the sun, which in large quantities could kill us. The out of balance extra amounts of CO2 have caused this hole in our ozone, which you may have heard about, and it's a big problem that's getting bigger. UV rays are causing warmer temperatures, particularly over Antarctica, and thus melting the polar ice caps little by little. This is causing the oceans to rise and throwing off the salinity balance, the salt concentration in the oceans, which is causing problems like killing off sea life and even altering, little by little, the way the Gulf Stream flows up through the Atlantic Ocean. So anyone who tells you that humans are not responsible for global climate change, that it's just a natural historical occurrence, is ignorant and blind. Sorry to be blunt, but that's the truth. We can trace these problems directly back to our burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, etc., starting in the Industrial Revolution, which has thrown off the balance of CO2 in the atmosphere. What can we do about it? The real kicker is that we can't just stop consuming such fuels for energy. Humans have been burning wood to produce heat and cook food for thousands and thousands of years. Could you imagine life even without that basic energy? And even if the CO2 we produce weren't causing problems with our atmosphere, we're still talking about burning up scarce resources. Whether humans run out of these fuels in 50 years or 200 years, we are going to run out of them eventually. Ideas for alternative energy sources abound. Some are already being put in place. Now, have you driven through northern or eastern Colorado lately and seen how many new windmill farms there are? There's solar power. There's biofuel, which involves creating fuel from sources that grow in the ground, corn and such, which can be replanted. It's even possible to extract methane, a gas that can be burned for heat and fuel from, yep, you guessed it, human and animal waste. The problem is that none of these is particularly cost effective. Yet. In order to put renewable sources of energy in place, they have to be easy to implement. How exactly will you get methane to power your car? And inexpensive enough that they can be implemented widely. With respect to technology in this chapter, there's also a lot to consider. For one, technology has the potential to help with some, even many, of the environmental concerns I just discussed. But technology has also changed society in hundreds of other ways. If you yourselves have been around and been paying even the slightest bit of attention over the last 6 years or so, you've probably noticed how much even a technology like the smartphone has changed human relationships. For me, I've noticed this when commuting to the Auraria campus on the light rail here in Denver. Prior to 2007, when we simply had so called dumb phones, people's behaviors on the train were limited to the occasional phone call or short text message. These days, you can ride the train and barely see anyone who isn't tapping or reading or talking or playing games or doing a whole host of other tasks on a simple handheld device. This has also changed our classes at UCD. If you've taken any on-ground classes, that is, classes taught in a traditional classroom, you've probably been confronted by the question of whether smartphones can or should be used during class. Some instructors are afraid that you'll just be texting or checking Facebook when you should be paying attention. Others have seen smartphones and tablets as a means of interaction during class. I ask a question, and if you need to look up some facts in order to give me your thoughts, I might say it's okay to look up those facts on the web, using your phone or tablet or even your laptop. So that's just one thing to consider in terms of technological change discussed in Chapter 16 of Macionis. There's a heck of a lot more. Make sure you give the whole chapter a thorough read, and I'll see you online.